Officially back from South Africa is my good old mate Don Topley. But after a trip that we'll talk more about in a moment, he returned back just in time for the sad news of Mike Proctor's passing. Don goes back a long way with Mike and was recently with him. So, Don, let's love to hear your thoughts on the great man.
Yeah, it's really sad. In a way, it hadn't been unexpected because he had some complications following an operation. But look, Mike Procter, the world really never saw Mike Procter at the top end of Test cricket, unfortunately, because of apartheid. That stands for a few of those wonderful, brilliant, great cricket players that South Africa had. But for Mike, well, I think he only played 7 tests, but he did particularly well in the World Series cricket. And he was a son of Gloucestershire. In fact, Gloucestershire often used to be called in the late 60s and 70s Proctorshire. He was a whirlwind of a cricketer. He actually didn't really bowl till he was 15. And then he started to bowl a bit more, but he was predominantly a batsman. In the nets at school, someone said to him, "Come on, you're going to have to bowl here." And he did, and he never looked back. But he was a wonderful cricketer, wonderful, wonderful cricketer. And for me, an even better bloke. I never played against him. I know I look old enough, but I'm not. I'm much younger than Mike. He was 77 when he passed. And the likes of John Lever, reminisces, Stuart Turner, those Essex heroes, they will remember him infinitely as a magnificent cricketer. I never played against him. At the beginning of my career, when I went to South Africa, it was in fact Mike Procter and indeed Barry Richards who looked after me as a youngster, as a 17, 18, 19-year-old in Durban. And Mike Procter always looked out for me and included me. And then I got to know him throughout my career when he returned and used to watch and support Gloucestershire. And you could tell how well he was revered. And then towards when I was in charge of Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe hosted South Africa because there weren't flights at the time going from South Africa to Australia for the 92 World Cup. And Mike Procter was their first professional coach. And so the coaches and captains, i.e. Dave Houghton, myself for Zimbabwe, and Kepler Wessels and Mike Procter, we travelled to Australia in first class. The rest of the players were down the back. But I must say, Mike Procter and myself did enjoy a glass of wine and, in fact, some South African pinotage. So I got to know him reasonably well through that as a coach. And whenever I visited South Africa, I would frequently bump into him, as I did 4 years ago when South Africa hosted England. And then only just recently, you're talking last month, when we spent the evening together and his very talented wife, Marina, where we were at Durban watching the SA20 and the Durban Supergiants, of which Reece was playing for. So we had a wonderful chat that evening. He loves cricket. He would have been an incredible T20 player today, and he would have been immensely wealthy. One thing about Mike that stood out for me, I often saw quotes, and I remember hearing him talk once about people said, it's a travesty that you've never played as much Test cricket as your talent deserved, of which he replied, politics was more important, and he understood. Other players probably a little bit more, they feel a bit bitter, but Mike never seemed to publicly. And I thought that was a wonderful thing for Mike. I was very sad just the weekend hearing of his passing. But He had been poorly and he'd been in a coma for some time. So probably one of his last public outings was the SA20, where we enjoyed a beer.
It's interesting that you mentioned about his Test career. He wasn't bitter about it. I mean, there's that great quote attributed to him saying what importance is a Test career against the suffering of 40 million human beings, which I think sums him up as a man completely.
Yes, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. You know, he almost had his Test career taken away, and we know why, and we know how wrong it was. But yeah, I think it's the mark of a man. He was a wonderful, wonderful cricketer, and as I suggested to you at the front end of this interview, he was an even better man.
South Africa's loss was county cricket's gain, though. So my memories of Mike were as a youngster watching John Player League cricket on the BBC on a Sunday afternoon. And a lot of those great South African names, in fact, a lot of great international names were regular fixtures on the county circuit for the whole summer. And I can remember Mike Procter, Clive Rice, was it Garth LaRue who was at Sussex?
Yes.
Yeah.
Barry Richards,
yeah.
Peter Kirsten.
Yeah. What names? What absolute stunning players. But there they were.
Eddie Barlow.
Eddie Barlow, yeah. Yeah. It's quite interesting to sort of look at the state of county cricket then and the regular attendance of these huge names from all around the world to what it is now. I don't really want to go down a different avenue, but I can remember seeing that mop of blonde hair, that huge long run up, that barrel chested action, and also some of the more unique at the time. There's shots we see all the time now from some of the modern players, but he was cross batting and hooking and swashbuckling back in the 70s. Long, it was all unorthodox and raised eyebrows and caused a bit of consternation amongst some county members at the time. But he was definitely ahead of his time.
Yeah, he was, and for youngsters, and may I suggest that we would have been those youngsters and inspired by those names you mentioned. We all wanted to be Mike Procter, and we all try to occasionally, comically, try and imitate his bowling action. It wasn't necessarily from the MCC coaching annual, nor was somebody like Lance Cairns, but we all tried to intimidate him. Gloucestershire, well, he was a great son of Gloucestershire, and certainly, their couple of finals they played in. I was listening to Andy Brassington, who is a great chap who you should get on your show. Andy Brassington talking about Mike Procter on BBC the other day, and he loved returning and celebrating those trophies and reunions. He was a tremendous man, wonderful man, who the players really enjoyed playing with. He led that Gloucestershire side, to be honest.
And then, as you say, when his playing career came to an end, he went into coaching, and that 92. Well, did you lock horns with him in 92?
Yeah, well, we travelled together from Zimbabwe to Australia, enjoyed many a glass of wine, and then we played South Africa at Canberra, and Peter Kirsten batted really well against Zimbabwe, and they duly won. And of course, one of my other old great mates, Alan Donald, was in that side. And of course, they did very well, having been, if you can remember, just going back reminiscing, South Africa were re-emitted, and we redid the World Cup. But first, they went to India and they released the doves, the white doves in India, to celebrate the fact that they have returned. Jimmy Cook, Clive Rice. I think Clive Rice was the captain. But then they went to the World Cup, of which I was involved in, and they got to really, if you remember, the famous semi-final where they needed
Jonty Rhodes.
Yeah, well, yeah, I caught up with Jonty Rhodes just recently. Lance Klusener, Morny Morkel. There's another chap, who's a wonderful, wonderful cricketer. And Morny Morkel's an even better bloke. So it was lovely to catch up with those three from I coached Jonty Rhodes back in Petermaritzburg back in around 1985. And do you know what? He remembers. He does. He remembers coming to a Christmas coaching clinic in Petermaritzburg, which I did, and along with Paul Newman, who used to play for Derbyshire.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. Not to be confused with the Paul Newman of the Daily Mail. Yeah, we had Chauncey on the show a couple of years back, and we're reminiscing about the Superman catch, the run out, sorry, the Superman run out of the Pie Man in Zamamil Huck, one of cricket's, and then that photograph is up there with one of cricket's iconic moments, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know what? In a most lovely way, he's still bonkers, and he's fidgety, he's energetic, he gives energy to the team, and he hasn't changed that persona since he was a young man. I remember him at that tender age of whatever he was, 11 or 12. But magnificent to catch up with some of those South African greats. Barry Richards, I did. Met him in Neisner, along with people like the modern day Anrich Nonkia.
Yeah, great player.
He's a great, big-hearted, lion-hearted fast bowler. Probably not the tallest, which surprised me, but wow, what a young man! And I have to say, the best chap I met this trip in South Africa, Darren, was a statesman. He was the former Springbok rugby captain who collected the trophy from Nelson Mandela, if you can remember that.
They made a film about it.
They did. And Francois Pienaar, I met him. He's involved with Pearl Rocks, Jason Roy and Josh Butler's team, in an administrative capacity or a cult figure. And let me just tell you, what a marvellous, marvellous statesman he was. That was my moment of the tour.
So before I let you go, just a word about the SA20, which is concluded. Very well done for Reece. Close but no cigar in the end. But looking at the tournament as a whole, and I was watching it from afar, it seems to be the new kid on the block with the proliferation these days of these franchise leagues springing up. But they seem to have got a lot of things right, in my opinion, down in South Africa.
Yeah, it has. Graham Smith, I don't want to say took a punt, but he's done very well. Society has embraced it, so it's becoming relevant in their society. The cricket was good. You get packed houses, big stadia, and how can I say this in the nice way? Our counties could learn a little bit. They could. It was full of energy. Great weather, of course. Yeah. That makes a difference.
And stunning scenery.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, every ground was packed out with very much partisan home support. Nothing wrong with that, but they've created a colour. So, I think something like county cricket could just take a little bit from them and have the home team dressed in colours and whatever. It's not quite done the same here, but it's just everything about the whole evening. It's a very special evening out now, and it's being embraced by everyone there. So on all facets of South African life, and whether you're a schoolboy or middle-aged or young lady, you want to go. You want to be at the hottest ticket in town in January and February. So no, well done to them. As for Durban Super Giants, they got to the final. The one difference about it is really quite a tight schedule. So in South Africa, basically, and this is where the players have found it a little bit harder, is it's got a game, fly, game, fly, game, fly. That's more or less it. There is no time for finding a bit of nick in the nets. There aren't really no nets. It's really game fly, game fly, game fly. And it's actually the flying side of it where you've got to be, you leave, it takes you an hour to get to the airport, 2 hours before your flight, and then you've got another hour at the other end after another hour and a half's flight. Let me tell you, that is the demanding bit. That's where Reece was challenged, but both mentally and physically, is the flying. It was quite ironic that we flew with him on a couple of flights around South Africa, where Mum and me had the leg room, and poor old Reece at 6'8" didn't.
Huh.
And he got fined, I believe, in his team meetings, quite a lot of rand, not a lot of pound, but a lot of rand.
Yeah.
The mother offered him her seat with leg room. And of course, when the management heard that, he got fined.
Oh dear.
Just like club cricket. Great bit of fun, great bit of fun. And it was an absolute pleasure and honour to watch and travel around and support the Durban Supergiants.
So last word on Mike Procter then. What's if you could tell someone, so let's say a Martian has just landed and wanted to know about Mike Procter, what's the one thing that you would say about him?
Again, I never played against him, but I got to know him later in life, and his reputation as a cricketer was second to none. Magnificent cricketer, ebullient, charismatic, strong as an ox, could bowl fast, could hit sixes, but he was also, importantly, a wonderful, wonderful human being. So, I think there's a message there. Talent is important, but it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice.
Beautifully said. And before I let you go, a little bird tells me that this week marks a momentous occasion in the House of Topley. It's a big birthday for you. It
is. Reece is 30. That's very kind of you to suggest that. He's 30. Absolutely. Yes. And what else are you going to say?
And it's 30 times 2 for your very good self.
I'm 50. That's very kind. Don't I look well on it?
You look fantastic for 50.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is. It's a big one for me. 60. I could cry. I can't believe I'm 60. I've got to get my head around it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I don't know what that's. Don't they always say for men 3 score and 10?
Yeah.
So I've got hopefully at least 10 years left. Others might say I shouldn't have, but hopefully I will. But yeah, thank you.
60 years, 60 balls. That's 10 overs. That's a decent spell.
That is. I'm not sure I could do that today. Hey, it will be off a very short run up.
Well, the last time I saw you bowl was at Lord's against certain R. Topley, and the leg stump went flying along with your shirt.
Yeah, it's nice to think that my last wicket was an international cricketer, wasn't it? Shall I leave it on that one?
We will. Well, happy birthday, Don. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fascinating to hear your reminiscences of the late, great Mike Procter.